Alliance says it will withdraw from the national dialogue and also lobby against the over 700 million rand process. This came after President Cyril Ramaphosa failed to meet the party's ultimatum to fire corruption-implicated ministers such as Thembi Simelane as well as Nobuhle Ngabane. Now, the party also says withdrawal from the government of national unity was never on the table, but a motion of no confidence against President Cyril Ramaphosa was indeed discussed and is now firmly in frame. DA Federal Council Chairperson Helen Zille joining us now for that discussion. Mazile, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Before I kick things off very quickly, earlier on we had a poll. I know it's not going to necessarily be fully representative of everything, but we asked our viewers just what it means to them then, and it's on our screens now. The DA says it will snub and lobby against the national dialogue. What is it that people think about it? 61% of the people that responded to it said it was just more empty threats then and that it wouldn't make any difference ultimately. What is your sentiment around that kind of commentary? Even if it comes from just a few people, doesn't, of course, not representative as we said. But what do you think of that commentary perhaps from some?
Well, whatever the polls were, they would have all been much wiser than us, as we know. We're very used to that. If we had brought the government down and brought the EFF and MK into power, the poll would have looked very different. You would have said, was it worth bringing the ANC and the EFF and MK into a coalition to replace the DA-ANC coalition? The polls would have been equally scathing, in fact, much more scathing of that. So the truth is, these polls are always amongst people who always know better and who often don't have any of the facts at their disposal. In this case, the national dialogue is very dear to President Ramaphosa's heart. He's invested a lot in it. I believe that it's just a cover for the ANC's 2026 election campaign, so I've been very opposed to it from the start. But it was a very important thing for the DA to say we're not participating in it. And if the DA, as the second largest party in the country, doesn't participate in it, the whole thing becomes a sham.
But why not
the whole thing
it?
becomes a hollow exercise.
Why not change it then from the inside? Why not be part of it, get into it and actually try to show that you're trying to make some developments and not make it what you're calling an ultimate sham here? Because not being part of this national dialogue, is that not shortchanging your constituents?
Not at all, because we have been in this government and we've been trying to make a big difference in the government, and our ministers have certainly done that. But the president treats us with absolute contempt, as if we didn't and our numbers didn't actually put him in the presidency, which in fact we did do. So if they treat us with that contempt inside the government, they will just walk all over us in the national dialogue, and we're not interested in that.
You were okay with the national dialogue when it was first announced by the seams of it and the budget that it then ultimately came with. But now the removal of Andrew Whitfield has sparked this up. Why the change now?
Well, the change now is because we can't sit by and do nothing. We have a statement of intent. The statement of intent says all decisions in government are taken by consensus. And if not by consensus, then by sufficient consensus. The president just ignores this all the time. We were never properly consulted about the national dialogue, and we said that from the beginning. I wrote three letters since July last year to Fikile Mbalula, who's my counterpart in the ANC. To this date, not one of them has been replied to formally. I've had some meetings with Fikile Mbalula, which I raised the issue, but he's never replied to the letters, and that's exactly what the president did to Andrew Whitfield. He applied to go overseas. It was a private trip. It had nothing to do with representing the government. And the handbook only says that you should apply to the president if you're going on government business. But even though he wasn't going on government business, he did apply, and the president never responded. And to this day, he hasn't responded. So in fact, Whitfield did exactly what he was supposed to do, and the president did not do what he is supposed to do. And the double standards is nauseating from the ANC. They're prepared to fire someone because he did what he was supposed to do and the president didn't bother to answer him, but they're not prepared to fire corrupt cabinet ministers. And we are going to show them very plainly that we don't play those games.
At the same time, though, Andrew Whitfield did himself say he did perhaps err in all of this, though, in not seeking permission or having gotten permission first before making this trip. So does that not go counter what it is you're making note of there then? And in the same notion, is basically if he was removed because he didn't do this, is it not still the right message? I mean, the president doesn't actually ultimately have to explain himself, but he did anyway to help, to show that he's actually trying to give some dialogue. Is that still not sufficient in your book?
The only thing that we've got to go on are the rules that are written down. And these rules are written down in the ministerial handbook. So many of President Ramaphosa's own colleagues, Simelane and the whole range of others, many, have violated the ministerial handbook over and over again. Yet he says, it's my prerogative, you've got to ask me permission, which Andrew did, and we can only go on the letter of the ministerial handbook. But he decides to overlook all the violations of the handbook by the ANC ministers and fire Andrew for what was not a violation of the handbook, but which the president claims was a violation of the handbook. So it shows that going overseas is more serious to the president than being corrupt and stealing public money and lying to Parliament.
Yeah. Just very quickly, we have the ANC spokesperson that we spoke to yesterday, Mahlengu Pengu Mitsiri, saying that the DA's repeated threats against the ANC are beginning to lose effect. Just wanted to play you that clip and perhaps get your response to that.
To threaten, and in this case to threaten the ANC, is now starting to fall on deaf ears, frankly, because it is so constant. The 48-hour ultimatum that was given, again, it was a threat. And of course, South Africans expected that today we'll be having a government of national unity that needs to be reconstructed. It did not come to that, but the threats continue. And I think walking away from dialogue on the part of the DA is really a sign of lack of maturity. Remember, it is the DA that is crisscrossing the courts over transformation legislation. The Bella Act, the Employment Equity Act of late, the land expropriation legislation, and the National Health Insurance one. Of course, they also went to court on the VAT increase. And these are people who are part of government. Some are ministers, some are deputy ministers. So they are actually part of government. They are supposed to be part of finding constructive solutions to some of the intractable challenges that South Africa is facing.
So ultimately, she's saying you're wanting to eat your cake, or rather have your cake and eat it too there. You want to be part of the GNU, but not part of the national dialogue, and then you ask for dialogue, and you don't want to be part of it. Your response?
What a joke. I mean, we've been trying to dialogue with the ANC in the government from the beginning, and they flatly ignore us. That's why we have to go to court. We only go to court because they flatly ignore us in government, where we are a crucial partner, where we bring the numbers to keep Cyril Ramaphosa in power. They flatly ignore us. They carry on as if they've got a 51% majority, which they don't have. And we are not going to make it easy for them to bring the EFF and MK into government. If the EFF and MK come into government, every single person in this country will suffer. The value of the rand will go through the floor. Investment will be withdrawn. Your pension will be worth a fraction of what it's worth now. And unemployment will skyrocket. That is what we know will happen if the EFF and MK come into government. And we promised South Africans that we would not let that happen. We're not going to make it easy for the ANC to ignore us by simply walking out. They're going to have to fire us, but we're very close to firing the president. Very close to firing the president.
I'm actually going to... Yeah, I'm actually going to go into that motion of no confidence in a second, but just very quickly, in another interview yesterday, you said, and I quote, "We have the power in our numbers because of the voters to bring the government down, and we will use that power." My two questions is, one, how? And two, how does that benefit the same country you're looking to rebuild if you're saying you have the ability and the power to bring the government down? How is that helpful?
Well, it's helpful if we are just merely puppets in the government of national unity. We don't plan to be treated that way. We have a statement of intent that the ANC has ignored at every turn. We're fighting for it to be respected and implemented. And if the ANC continues as if they have an overall majority, we will show them that they do not. And if Cyril makes himself indistinguishable from Paul Mashatile and the corrupt RET faction, we will also indicate to them that we have the numbers to bring down the president. And we will use those numbers. We came very, very close to doing so. A motion of no confidence was actually in the frame. And a motion of no confidence would bring the president down and it would bring the government down. And we know what the consequence of that would be, but we will not be treated in the way that the president chooses to treat us, with hypocrisy and with double standards. That is why we're using our numbers in Parliament to vote against the budget votes of those implicated ministers, so they won't get their budget votes through. That'll be an indication that we will use our numbers against the ANC when we have to.
Yep.
And we are using our numbers and our influence to turn the national dialogue into a total sham and to prevent the ANC from using public money, 700 million rands worth of public money, to drive what is their disguised election campaign.
Helen, one has to ask, however, how would a motion of no confidence work and succeed for you? You need 201 votes at the very least. Even if all the coalition partners voted with you, it only brings that number to 127. Who else would you lobby?
It brings that number to 197. We've done our sums very carefully.
So who have you added to that?
We've done our lobbying. Well, who do you think? I mean, look at the composition of Parliament. We've added to the ANC's tally everyone who might possibly vote with the ANC. And we know who they are. We know exactly who they are. So it brings us to 197. That brings us to a whisker of 201 seats, 201 votes. It brings us to a whisker of that. And we know that even when there's a three-line whip, all the ANC MPs are never in Parliament. They've always got something else to do. The ANC always falls short on the numbers. We know that.
So this is so this would include other members who are not part of the GNU then, is that correct?
Of course.
Yeah.
When you go to Parliament, everyone's voting.
All right. I'm just wondering, because if you've lobbied everyone within the GNU itself, which would then collapse the GNU in its form and fashion, everybody outside the GNU, and then to create another government and parliament with the EFF and the MK is what you think would possibly be at play here. Is that not counter what it is that you're trying to do? Would that not be counterproductive?
You know, you make me laugh. Our number one choice has been to make a government of national unity work, even though we didn't get enough cabinet seats, even though the president, against our agreement, inflated the cabinet to give more cadre deployment posts to the ANC, even though they have never respected the statement of intent. We've tried to make the government of national unity work.
Yeah. Okay.
If the president is going to continue ignoring the fact that we have the numbers, we will take the next step. It's firmly in the frame. We're going to use our numbers. We're going to use our numbers in Parliament in the week ahead to show that we're going to vote down budget votes. And that will show exactly what we can do in a motion of no confidence in Parliament. That'll give an indication of where the votes actually lie and what we can do with those votes.
Okay, so you're asking to remove these ministers that you believe are corruption, affiliated, etc., right? Why were you not asking for their removal before this happened?
We were. We keep on asking for the corrupt to be fired. But then suddenly one of our members is fired when he did nothing wrong, when the president can't answer his letters. And then we say, okay, that's it. That proves hypocrisy. That proves double standards. That proves that the ANC doesn't care about corruption. That proves that all Cyril Ramaphosa's words are absolutely hollow. They mean absolutely nothing. And we will show him that we will not tolerate that level of hypocrisy and double standards, and that we don't see very much difference between him and Paul Mashatile and the corrupt RET faction anymore.
So what will it take now for a motion of confidence? Are you waiting for one more mistake, one more ultimatum, one more element from the president who clearly is saying that he will exercise his powers according to the Constitution?
What we want is the statement of intent to be respected. We want clause 19 and especially 19.3 to be given an institutional mechanism to work. We've been talking about this for a year. I would have insisted that it was in the original agreement, but we had to reach agreement according to the country's constitution within 2 weeks of the election. So we put it in there. And you know what? Fikile Mbalula signed that document with me. His signature isn't worth the paper it is written on.
Helen Zille, Federal Council Chairperson of the Democratic Alliance.